I never thought my own living room would feel like an interrogation room, but that morning, when the flashing red and blue lights bled through my curtains, I knew everything I had carefully built was about to detonate. And the cruelest part, it wasn't a stranger who lit the fuse, it was my family, the sound of heavy boots on the porch, sharp knocks, 3 times, the kind of knock you don't ignore, MS, Raman, Department of Homeland Security. My heart plummeted. For a second I wondered if this was some twisted prank, but when I opened the door and saw the federal jackets, the tactical gear, and the black SUV swallowing the street, my blood turned to ice. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions about the contents of a file folder recently accessed from this address." The agent's voice was calm but clipped. He knew exactly what he was looking for. I didn't need to ask which folder. Basic work files. That was the name of the folder sitting innocently on my personal laptop. A folder that contained nothing basic at all, at least not for ordinary people. For me, it contained encrypted files tied to sensitive cybersecurity operations I managed through my government contract job. Files that in the wrong hands could burn countries. The problem, someone had opened it last night, and it wasn't me. 12 hours earlier, I was sitting at my kitchen counter, sipping cheap instant coffee, my mind drowning in the gray fog of another exhausting week. Work had been brutal, marriage was hanging by threads I no longer had the strength to hold, and my sister's family, who had moved in temporarily after their financial mess, was treating my home like a rent-free hotel. I loved them, I really did, but love and trust are 2 very different currencies. Why do you keep that ugly old laptop locked up like it's gold? My brother-in-law Adil had teased the night before. He was a smooth talker, the kind who could lie and make it sound like a compliment, because it is. I'd replied curtly, snapping my locker door shut. It wasn't arrogance, it was survival. That laptop was my entire professional life. I'd worked in cybersecurity long enough to know one wrong click could destroy everything. But in the back of my mind, something had been gnawing at me lately. Someone had been watching me too closely. The late-night login attempts, the way my Wi-Fi blinked irregularly, and Adil's curious eyes. When the agents entered, my living room transformed into a crime scene. Every movement they made was efficient, cold, rehearsed. My mother was sobbing in the corner, wrapped in a shawl. My sister Noor stood frozen, clutching her daughter like she'd been caught stealing. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, placing my laptop on the table. This device was used to access classified information through an unauthorized fingerprint login at 2:14 a.m. Were you aware? I shook my head slowly, my throat tightening. Adil cleared his throat. It was just a folder labeled basic work files, he said weakly. I didn't know it was a what. The words ripped through me before I could stop them. In that instant, something cracked inside me, not the kind of crack you can tape back together. The agents exchanged glances. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us for questioning. Your entire household may be subject to investigation." I watched as Noor's face crumpled. My mother whispered my name like a prayer. I'd spent a decade building an identity as a strong woman in a male-dominated field. I'd clawed my way out of broken relationships, betrayals, and endless judgment to get here. But none of that mattered now, because a man I let stay under my roof had turned my life into a ticking bomb. And he wasn't sorry. I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't scared for me. He was scared for himself. I took a deep breath, tasting the bitterness of betrayal on my tongue. The agent leaned in. MS Raman, who else had access to this device? I looked at Adil. At my sister, at the family I once trusted more than anyone. My voice came out like shards of glass. Apparently, I said everyone but me. And just as they began reading out the warrant, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war? The air inside the federal holding room was colder than the snowstorm raging outside. White walls, stainless steel chair, no windows, only a camera watching my every breath. They didn't handcuff me, not yet. But their silence was louder than any accusation. I'd spent years working in cybersecurity for government agencies, protecting sensitive data, tracking cyber threats, exposing foreign interference. I knew what this room meant. When Homeland Security came knocking, it wasn't for spilled coffee on a laptop. It was for blood. Your login credentials were used to access Tier 4 encrypted files, Agent Harlow said across the table. She was sharp, clean, cut, with the kind of calm voice that belonged to someone who'd heard every excuse in the book. That doesn't happen accidentally. I didn't touch that folder, I said, steadying my voice. But someone in my house did. Then let's talk about who's living in your house. I told them everything, my sister, her husband, their kid, my mother, how they'd moved in 3 months ago after Adil's failed business. How I tried to help, how I trusted them, and as I spoke my chest burned, not from fear but from something uglier, humiliation, because in trying to save them I'd handed them the keys to destroy me. Back home the search had already begun. My neighbors texted me black SUV, armed agents, media trucks. My house wasn't just a home anymore, it was a headline waiting to happen. When I was finally allowed back, it didn't even feel like mine. Everything was upside down, cushions ripped, cabinets emptied, laptops gone. My mother's tears stained the walls. Noor's voice was hoarse from crying, and Adil, he wasn't there, where is he? I asked. Noor didn't answer, she just stared at the floor. I found him 2 hours later, at a friend's warehouse, shoving his phone into his pocket when he saw me. Why the hell did you open my files, Adil? His jaw tightened. I didn't know it was government stuff, Zara, I swear. I just thought maybe there was something what, my salary, my projects. His silence was confirmation enough. I felt my stomach twist as the truth began to surface. This wasn't curiosity, this was premeditated. He'd always been too interested in my job, asking about passwords, clients, even the tech I used. I thought it was annoyance, but it was greed. Homeland agents told me later that the encrypted files had been copied. Someone had tried to sell them through a dark web contact. The transaction failed, but the intent was clear. They traced the access back to my home network, and the fingerprint, Adil's. When I confronted Noor, she broke down. He said he was just trying to make some money to fix things. She sobbed. He promised me he wouldn't hurt you. But he already had. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just Adil, it was Noor too. My sister, the one who held my hand when I got my first job offer, who called me her role model, had stood by as her husband opened a door I'd spent my whole life keeping locked. The agents wanted to arrest him. But they also wanted something else. Ms. Rahman, Agent Harlow said, you're in a unique position. If you cooperate and help us catch the people behind this, your charges could be cleared. My charges? My charges, the words echoed inside me like a curse. I hadn't done anything wrong, but in their world, intent didn't always matter. Access did. I looked down at my trembling hands. 10 years of hard work. My name, my career, all hanging by a thread because I opened my door to family. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to let them destroy me, not Adil, not the people he sold the data to. Not even the government if they stood in my way. Fine, I said, lifting my chin. I'll help you catch them. But when this is over, my name gets cleared. Agent Harlow's cold smile was all the agreement I needed. The operation began 2 weeks later. I became what I never thought I'd have to be, bait. Homeland Security traced the data buyer to an offshore network known for recruiting desperate insiders. Adil had made contact with them through a proxy server. What he didn't know was that after his fingerprint accessed the files, a silent alert system in my laptop activated. A trap I had built myself long ago. Every step he took was already mapped. I walked into the safe house that night wearing a wire under my sweater. My hands didn't shake anymore. My fear had burned away, leaving behind something sharper, something cold. When Adil saw me there, his eyes widened. Zara, what the hell are you doing here? You started this, I said softly. I'm just here to finish it. The room was filled with 2 men, buyers, dangerous. One had a scar on his cheek. The other wore gloves like a surgeon. They didn't trust me, but they trusted the data, and that was enough. I have what you need, I said, sliding the encrypted drive onto the table, but I want triple. They leaned in. I caught their scent, a mix of tobacco and metallic cold. My heart pounded against the wire. Outside, agents were listening to every breath. Adil's hands twitched nervously. He thought I was betraying my country with him. He didn't know I was betraying him. As soon as they plugged the drive in, the trap detonated. not with an explosion, but with a silent cyber detonation that infected their systems. Coordinates pinged, agents stormed in within minutes, chaos. Adil tried to run. I didn't stop him, because when they pinned him to the ground and read him his rights, I looked at him. Not with hate, but with a calm I didn't know I had. "You stole from me," I whispered. But I took everything back. Weeks later, I stood in court. Adil was sentenced to years for attempted sale of classified information. Noor couldn't meet my eyes. My mother's heartbreak was a quiet storm I'd have to live with forever. But my name was cleared. Homeland Security offered me a promotion. They said my quick thinking saved them months of investigation. I didn't take it immediately because real revenge isn't about power. It's about peace, and peace takes time. I moved out of the house where everything fell apart. I bought a small apartment near the sea. The sound of the waves at night became my new lullaby, not the sound of betrayal, not the sound of boots on my porch. I forgave Noor eventually, not for her, for me. But Adil, some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. Some lessons need scars. Looking back, I realized something. People think strong women roar their strength out loud. But the strongest ones, they rebuild in silence. They smile in courtrooms where everyone else expects them to break. They walk out of burning houses carrying nothing but their own spine. My family accessed my basic work files. They thought they found a secret they could profit from. But the real secret was me.